Spotify has this feature where you can put a poll or question at the end of it.
Mm.
So I did that too.
You're so good.
I mean, I just found it out yesterday. So
I love reading all of your posts because it's like you just do a really good job of taking it all and reflecting, and I think like wrapping it in a beautiful adoptive bow. And also I mean I think just like everything is super creative. I think that you're putting all the stuff out there in a really engaging way, so
thank you.
props to you. All right, so the reason that we're having trouble talking
Exactly.
about episode 3 is because we already talked about episode 3, which focus of the week is growth mindset.
Yes.
Hey y'all, she's Hannah.
He's Greg.
She's adopted.
He's not.
She's black.
He's not.
And this is the
Fake Siblings Podcast.
Growing up as adoptive siblings presented unique challenges.
That's not your real brother.
How long have you been dating? The realness of our siblingship was often called into question, and we want to talk about it.
Because despite it all, we've always been super close. And ain't nothing fake about that.
In honor of the growth mindset, we are recording for a second time because the first time
my microphone dies. I edited the first podcast, so if the editing is good or bad,
feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
so Hannah has been trying to ISO her sound for the last couple days. We finally just decided,
Yeah, so yeah, in the true spirit of growth mindset, we're doing it again.
Which is good too, because last week we meet up most Fridays. Today's Thursday.
Yeah.
We meet up most Fridays, and Hannah and I drove to drop off CJ's iPad at school, and we had a nice, just honest conversation, and we came to a realization of a couple things. Number one, that was like right after we had published the first episode.
So we had published our first episode the Wednesday prior, and then that Friday we met up to record. So we started off kind of in the car reflecting on like how do we feel about the first podcast.
It was the first time we had spoken since it launched on Wednesday too. We were both like eerily silent for Wednesday and Thursday, I feel like.
I guess so. I didn't really think about it, but yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, felt a little cringe. It's always weird hearing your own voice.
Yeah. But yeah, when we were in the car trying to think of like pros, like what were the good parts? We were both kind of like,
hard to spot the good parts.
Yeah, it was really hard for us to identify the things that we had done well.
When you listen and you're like, what?
That was mid.
I heard a YouTuber that I watched the other day saying that like mid is so like meh, but dece is like almost the same thing as mid. It's just like, step above.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
So dece is short for like decent?
Yeah.
Well, decent in like Philly, it's like, that's dope. Like, that's decent.
Oh.
It was, at least. Now, I might be aging myself in saying that, because I'm sure now, at this point, it's probably not that. But it used to be like, that's decent. Like, that's, you doing that.
So I think part of that conversation that we had in the car, I was thankful for, because I think, it's hard things are hard. It's hard to like bring up the challenging parts. And I said to you, listen, I also want to hear from you if you feel like I say things that are cringe or whatever.
Problematic.
Problematic. Yeah. And you definitely had something right off the bat that had bothered you. And you mentioned that I said that adoption has been wonderful or amazing for our family.
Yeah.
And while that is certainly a perspective, it minimized, I think, all of the other adjectives that adoption has been. Like,
you saying adoption has been, I know adoption has been amazing for our family. yeah, I think that there's something about the overwhelming narrative of adoption being really beautiful and amazing and
Yes.
just like the best possible thing that can happen to someone. Um, it's just there's a lot of like very flowery language when it comes to adoption. And I know that for myself and for a number of adoptees, that language is not so appreciated. Not because adoption can't be good, but because
The flowery language is reductive. It doesn't allow, or it doesn't give space for
the
all of the
wealth of
challenge. Yeah.
emotions that are associated with
It,
adoption.
because it's certainly not just amazing.
Yeah,
Or
and I know that like if we're looking at adoptees' experiences and the outcomes we've seen in adoptees' lives, like there are a lot of adoptees who are suffering and struggling. And I think that in a lot of ways, that flowery language and the videos of the little kids getting adopted in the courthouse and the like all these things, all the like big marketing of the adoption industry kind of paints this really like beautiful picture over a lot of people's really hard times. So yeah, I just wanted to push back on you about that in particular. And I just would push back on like everyone to let like when it comes to the language around when it comes to evaluative language around adoption, leave it up to the people who are actually experiencing being adopted.
mm, and give them more space to say them.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I think that also like adoptees face a lot of pushback when they do try and share the harder parts of adoption, which again, like just makes people feel more and more dismissed and isolated and alone, and which also leads to those like negative outcomes that I referred to earlier. Yeah.
I think the part of that comes from like a place of defensiveness, not necessarily intentionally.
Yeah.
Uh, like for the caregiver or
Mm-hmm.
the people around. Um, but yeah, like hearing that feedback and having having all of these flowery feelings and hearing that maybe it isn't actually all that.
Yeah.
Um, I think can be hard for people too, for sure.
Absolutely. And
Um,
I think people hear my adoption was hard for me as I didn't want to be adopted, or I don't want you to be my parents, or I whatever. Like it's they hear it's again very defensive of just like, oh, this is saying something about me. When I think most adoptees would agree, oftentimes, sometimes it is saying things about the family you grew up in,
sure.
but I think a lot of times it's saying more about the world that we live in, the systems and structures that make parenting, birthing decisions more challenging for certain people. Yeah, all kinds of different just obstacles that make being a marginal identity difficult. So it's at least I can speak for myself that like when I am pushing back on adoption, it's almost never from like a personal like offense that mom and dad have done to me, and definitely nothing that they've done maliciously or intentionally. Um, but adoption be hard.
I know, and it's interesting that you mention, birthing. I mean, we live in a wild time when it comes to birthing decisions
Oh
and
yeah,
things
birthing
like that.
decisions. Yeah,
Because
the decision to
people,
parent.
yeah, because in a lot of ways the decision has been removed from people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
lots of,
the one thing that happens a lot with adoption and abortion is they get conflated into the same decision, and they're not. Um, abortion is a decision not to continue a pregnancy, and adoption is a decision not to parent. So stop that. So if you're somebody who feels inclined to ask people, "Would you have rather been aborted?" Like, don't. Like,
think twice.
yes, or like even the people who are like, just adopt kids, and it's like, it's just anyway. I'm getting on my soapbox, but
Hmm.
I just feel like these issues are really complex, and adoption is not an abortion mandate.
Healthcare.
We need to take care of people.
Mm-hmm. That is our soapbox.
That is my soapbox.
Yeah, and I think is one of those things that I'm trying not to say so much. It's my filler words.
I say it a lot too.
It's how I transition from sentence to sentence and don't let you in. I'm trying to let you in, Hannah, you know?
Okay. I'm in. Go ahead. Oh, no. You had also, the reason why I even brought that up in the first place was you had brought up something that you heard and you were like, yikes. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we were talking about late discovery adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it, and I think having interesting dialogue. And then I said, just to kind of like punctuate the conversation, I think for whatever reason,
Yeah.
discomfort, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm thankful our parents didn't play on our naivete, and I think that that did a number of things. It silenced that part of the conversation. That's not our family, but also it is lots of other families, and so I did not intend to just like cut that off. And I aim with my growth mindset to make sure that we continue to have challenging conversations. We ask questions to get deeper into subjects, and when we don't know about things, we'll still try to or we'll try to get into it, and that's where we'll look to community.
Yes, there we go.
For just for feedback, for your perspective, for lots of things. Yeah. I mean, in that vein, I've not made it to where I am in life without assessing my white male privilege regularly, daily, hourly, all of the ways. So please feel free. I'm comfortable. I can take it. I know Hannah can too, but I think I stand to say more weird stuff unintentionally, maybe. But please, we're in this together. So
yeah, I think that's a good place to transition into kind of like that's not what you did there. Into the next piece, which is talking about growth mindset, and we're building this bridge between growth mindset and privilege. And the question at hand is, in the context of checking one's privilege, what does it look like to have a growth mindset?
For those unfamiliar, growth mindset describes a way of viewing challenges and setbacks. People who have a growth mindset believe that even if they struggle with certain skills, their abilities are not set in stone. They think that with work, their skills can improve over time. Thanks to understood.org for that definition.
Understood.org sponsored the podcast.
In the context of growth mindset, in the context of privilege, how do you operate with the growth mindset?
Yeah, what does it look like to have a growth mindset when challenging privilege? I think about when I coach adoptees, which I haven't been doing as much recently, but one of the big pieces of the model I use is a lot of times when it comes to trying to grow, we like to focus on changing. We focus a lot of attention on changing the outcomes that we see in our lives, and we do that by managing our behavior. So you're not happy with your physical fitness, so you change your behavior by going to the gym or exercising more, but my push for my coaches, and that's just a simple example, but my push for my coaches is to move beyond just managing behavior and looking more at your underlying beliefs, because I feel like those are what determine the behavior that you have. So you can want to be more fit, but if you believe you've never been good at X, Y, and Z, or you believe that the other people in the gym know what they're doing more than I do, or whatever the thing is. Um, it's more meaningful, I think, to try and stretch out those beliefs than I'm just gonna drink this much water each day or whatever the thing is.
That's where that mindset things come in. Kind of
Yeah, so
comes
I
in.
was just trying to say, like, I think it's just really important to shift your. I mean, it's why it's called growth mindset, but shift your mindset and like actually believe that like brain elasticity is a thing. Like your brain can change and grow, and you can learn new things. And as silly as it sounds to say that, because it's like, well, maybe you might feel like, well, duh, but like a lot of times, the ways that we operate don't don't represent that belief at all.
Right. I mean, I think about myself as an adult, and I remember hearing like in school as a kid that your brain is fully developed at 25, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, but I still like I'm learning so much more about myself and who I
Yeah.
am and
Or
how
your
I operate in
personality is
this world,
developed at
right?
age 7, by age 7 or something like that. That's something I hear as a parent too, and I'm like, oh, jeez.
Right.
All right, go ahead, finish. But yes,
No, I mean that was basically my point. Is
yeah,
like don't listen to that.
right. Like there might be some truth to that. Like a lot of it is formed, so you should be. I think the point of those things is like putting the responsibility on the caregivers to those groups of people, um, to take to be intentional and take care of children and adolescents during that time. But it doesn't mean that people are destined to whatever
Yes,
greatness
and
or failure or whatever the dichotomy is.
yeah,
Yeah.
nourish a critical mindset. Nourish that it is healthy to see things maybe not the way that everybody else sees them.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think like why does that, or so if my piece of advice is like start shifting your mindset around the idea that you can grow, things that you've never been good at you can become better at. Why is that relevant to privilege? But the reason why I think that like mindset shift is important to privilege is I think sometimes when we think about systems of oppression, power, control, and like these big isms and archies, um, like it can be really daunting personally to be like, well, how can I possibly do anything about that? Or I can't control the fact that I have the skin color I have, or I can my parent, I didn't own slaves, or whatever the thing is. Um, a growth mindset can help you to see the small steps that you can take in combating these big, because the reality is these big isms and archies are maintained and sustained by us.
But I think about when we grew up in an all white town. I lived there until I was 25. And then I moved to Baltimore, just like
I say,
nonprofit org.
well, oh, woke up today feeling the way I always do. I'm starting at the beginning of the verse, which is not a good idea, but it's Good Morning Baltimore. It's from Hairspray.
I love that. I've never seen Hairspray.
Oh, I love Hairspray.
I know. It took place in Hamden, which is North Bmore.
Yep. Yeah.
Good morning, Baltimore.
And it's like, there's the bum on his barroom stool. He wished me luck on my way to school.
Get it, girl.
Yeah.
Keep
Shout out,
singing.
shout out to Tracy Turnblad. Um, but yeah. Anyway, sorry. When you have all the
We
words, I
good.
thought
No,
about
I
that.
love it. I love it. I love it.
Okay, so
Never stop.
You
So I moved to Baltimore for
yes.
a fellowship with a nonprofit organization that worked with youth on probation. Amazing experience. There I go again with that word amazing.
That's okay. It can be amazing.
It was
your experience, so yeah, you can evaluate it how you want.
I mean and it was
Yeah.
it was really eye opening for me, and it's hard to argue that it was anything other than good for the kids involved too.
Yeah.
Maryland likes to imprison its young people.
Ooh.
Yeah, major boo. And so the program that I was working for was a diversionary program, which meant that we were trying to keep kids in the home, keep them with their parents, keep them in school, all of the good things. Don't send them to child jails.
Mm-hmm.
I think generally a valid opinion. Don't
I
send kids to child jails.
don't do it.
And so at the end of my fellowship year, it was a 1 year program. I think that I could have done a second fellowship year, but that didn't really that wasn't the ladder, right? And so
Gotcha.
there were two supervisor positions available at the end of my year, and I applied for them, and I didn't get either one. I was like, I felt like I was very much a shoe in.
Yeah.
One of the supervisor positions was my direct supervisor, and I was like, well, I know the area, I know, the kids that we'll be serving, I know this caseload. Obviously, it won't be the same caseload the whole time, but like, I thought that I was the one, and so I don't think that I went into my interview particularly well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I think that thinking that I think I went into it with a very like problematic mindset, a very
Yeah.
privileged mindset that who else would it be?
Yeah.
And it totally detracted from the women who ended up getting the two roles, who are amazing and both from Baltimore, and um, uh, so